Good afternoon. My name is Laurine Garaude. I'm director of the TV division at Reed Meadham. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this Women in Global Entertainment Power Lunch. It's the 6th edition already, and it's one of the highlights of MIPCOM. And wow, what a gathering of powerful and influential executives from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. I'd like to thank very warmly our founding partners and co-creators of this event, Lifetime and 80 Networks. Thank you so much. And what a beautiful room, thanks to the wonderful decoration here. So another thank you, and the beautiful photography. And also I'd like to thank our media partner, The Hollywood Reporter. Thank you for that. The subject of gender balance behind and in front of the camera has never been so talked about. And the troubling news, the recent news, have again exposed the hurdles that many women still face today when building their careers in this industry. These critical issues only reinforce the relevance of this gathering and underline our discussions, and especially how vital our discussions and our actions especially are in moving things forward. So we're very fortunate today to have an incredible lineup of speakers, starting with Academy and Tony Award-winning actress Catherine Zeta-Jones. What an honor to have you at MIPCOM and here at this event, Catherine. Thank you so much. And Catherine will be interviewed by Leah Goldman, Editor-in-Chief of Lifetime. We will then hear from a panel of unique and outstanding executives, Fleur Pellerin, founder and CEO of Korelya Capital in France and president of CANNESERIES. Fleur and the CANNESERIES team just gave a press conference this morning. For those of you who, most of you know, I hope, CANNESERIES and MIPTV will be, well, CANNESERIES is launching at next MIPTV in April, and together it's going to be the biggest week in TV, so stay tuned for that. And going back to today, Farah Abushwesha is with us. She's the best-selling author and BAFTA-nominated producer, right over there. And Willow Grylls, co-founder and executive producer of New Pictures in London. Thank you. They will be interviewed by our partner, Marisa Guthrie. She will be interviewing them just after we begin. And now please join me in a warm welcome for Leah Goldman, Editor-in-Chief, Lifetime.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us in this celebration of our shared love of the Lifetime movies. I'm new to this trailblazing organization, but in the months that I've joined A+E Networks, Lifetime specifically, I've been overwhelmed by the tremendous talent among us, and our producing team in particular. And I want to just take a second to acknowledge them. Tanya Lopez, Lisa Hamilton-Daly, Megan Hooper, who are here among us. Just raise your hand, say hello to everybody. The best in the business. It too often goes unmentioned, so I'm going to mention it here, that because we are among the industry's leading producer of television movies, we are also one of the industry's leading employers of women, both behind the camera and in front of it. I think that's worth noting and acknowledging and celebrating in this room in particular. We are drawing talent from the best in the business, as the gallery of greats on the left telegraphs and exemplifies. We are here, and as the kids say, we are slaying it. So on that note, I am so honored and delighted to introduce Catherine Zeta-Jones. Catherine, as you all know, join us please, Oscar winner, Tony winner, BAFTA winner, two-time Golden Globe Award nominee. Catherine is also, you are probably all aware, Catherine is also well known in this business for her philanthropic work and her activism. And if you don't believe me, you can ask the Queen of England, who conferred on her the, what is the title? Commander of the Order of the British Empire. I know there's a lot of fancy titles in the room, but I'm pretty sure she's the only commander.
Thank you. Catherine means business. That is quite a role. One we're not used to seeing from you.
No, one that I've been wanting to play forever. And I just want to take, before I say anything, is that I want to just thank all my new family, my team, for making this dream happen for me in the way that I was beyond my dream of pulling together the best talent, the best creative force, and making, and I have to say, the best, as an actor, the best experience I've ever had, because I was able to play a role that wasn't specifically a Catherine Zeta-Jones role, which I have no idea what that is, and it's a fallacy of what I portray usually on film, but making this this experience the best ever, and may we do it all again. So just thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, everyone. Tanya Lopez, Lisa, everybody, my new family at Lifetime.
So, you know, it is a challenging role. She's a brutal, brutal woman. I mean, this is a difficult one. Why were you attracted to playing Griselda Blanco?
Well, I think as an actor, you're always searching for great material, women who are deep, complicated. This woman has no traits of what I am as a citizen of this planet. And usually as actors, I mean, even in acting class, one gets told that they find something, some iota of a trait within yourself that you can enlarge upon or play upon. And this woman has none of that at all. Coming of an age in Hollywood or in the industry at large, those roles are harder to find anyway. To find something of a caliber of role of Griselda that spans so many emotions, so many depth and layers, it was something that I was adamant that I at some point had to do. She has no redeemable qualities. I mean, this woman...
She's not kidding.
No, this woman was as ruthless, as powerful, as dangerous as any man in this very dark world. She created the skyline of what you see in Miami today. She... unlike Pablo Escobar, who became like the Robin Hood of the drug trade, she didn't have that. She was greedy. She was, but she came from the slums in Medellin, and she became the most powerful in that world, in the 80s cocaine world in America. There's something admirable in the fact that she came from nothing, I guess, as a woman, and became as powerful and ruthless and dangerous as any man. I kind of want a round of applause for that. It's not particularly the trade or the business that I would necessarily want to be as powerful and as ruthless and dangerous in, but noteworthy in all its excess, greed, and disgrace. But I had a wonderful director, Guillermo Navarro, who saw the vision as I did. And why Lifetime? Why A&E?
Why Lifetime?
Why?
You could have told the story in a number of ways, in a number of formats. So why television? Why Lifetime?
Well, the story of Griselda Blanco and everything I just talked to you about her wouldn't necessarily seem to be, to many people, not us in this room or people in this industry or people who work with the creative at A&E and Lifetime, but wouldn't necessarily be like a quintessential Lifetime movie. But what historically Lifetime and A&E have done is create real dramatic stories for women, but for all genders. Strong, powerful, interesting, diverse. The script, the story that I wanted to tell was as it is. I didn't want it to be rose-tinted. I didn't want it to have a finesse that would make it a little bit acceptable or make her nice, make her understanding, you know. No, Griselda is Griselda, and I wanted to show her in a movie her story, a slice of her life, as raw and as dark and as powerful as it was. And Lifetime and A&E jumped up to the plate and didn't want to rose-tint it, wanted to show her as she was, warts and all. And that, to me, was just an amazing opportunity. And I think that we've created a film that is all that. And a woman, a character, as you know, as I mentioned before, of all her warts and alls, an interesting character to be viewed and try to understand, and it's a great piece of work. I'm very proud of it, I have to say.
We are too.
Thank you.
Very proud of it. You are part of a migration of A-list Hollywood talent making their way to television. We just saw Nicole Kidman win the Emmy for her role on television. What is happening here? Why is television now the most compelling platform for your storytelling?
Well, I think that, you know, not just actors and actresses, let's call us actors, but also the writers, the filmmakers, the creative. We live in a world of movies, as wonderful as they are, and where it's yet another sequel of a franchise, or there's certain characters, there's certain stories that have to be, should be told, that would never get put on the screen. You know, it's a low-budget movie. If it's like a, you know, literally a handheld camera, you seem to be able to get it made. If it's a $200 million movie with $200 million for press and advertising on top of that, you seem to be able to get that made. But the true stories, the true human stories, are becoming rare, as in movie theaters and television, which used to have a stigma to it.
Right,
it used to have this, but then I come from a world of stigmas. I started at 9 years old in the theater, and I grew up just thinking I was only going to be in the theater because I was told I was a showgirl. I was a song and dance. I was in musical theater, and that's where I should remain. And it wasn't until I was just telling my new friend here from France, who was going to be I was speaking with you later, that it was a French director, Philippe de Broca, who saw me in the theater and put me in front of a camera for the first time, and gave me a chance, because I'd never even crossed my mind, or I'd never had the chance. And so we were pigeonholed back then. And if you were TV, you were a TV actress. Or if you were a movie star, you were like untouchable in a way, you know? But to be able to use the medium of television, where you have more time to tell a story, whether it be in series or a film, a fully fledged film. For us as actors, it's just a medium and an outlet for creativity that has never been so polished, so the quality so high, the bar so high. And I think that I'm just, along with Nicole, and I spoke to her about this a lot with a lot of us, men and women alike are lucky that we are now in this industry right now, where this medium has become so important, where people at home have screens this size, you know. You know, the people are having movie experiences in their homes, on their sofas, with their families, and so it's amazing to see, and it's and the outlets, the different media outlets that we can be reached through television, you know, so on an international level, as opposed to colloquial, just the US, you know, the US market or the British market or the French. And they all used to be very specific in their cultural television or, you know, humor even. It's like, whoa, British humor doesn't go across the Atlantic. We can't, you know, we can't show this in America. Well, it does, because the world has got smaller, and our tastes have remained the same, and the quality has got better, and so we're just along on this fantastic creative roller coaster. And I'm just really happy that my return to television has been this experience. It's been with this creative force. It's doing a piece of work that I'm very proud of. It's pushing the envelope for me as an actor, yes, as well as what as women are portrayed on film. Forget about what medium it is. It's, you know, this woman is not the quintessential woman. She's not a stay-at-home mom. I'm from somebody I'm 48 years old, you know, she's not, you know, the ex-wife or the mom, you know,
defies a lot of conventional wisdom.
Yes, well said.
Yes. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't, speaking of how small the world has become, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the elephant in the room. I turned on CNN International this morning. It was the lead item, Harvey Weinstein, the explosive allegations. Were you surprised? What do you make of everything that's happened?
Well, I'm shocked and disgusted, profoundly proud of those women. And that big old dinosaur that people think that you're able, a man is able to get away with that behavior and has been getting away with it for years, is extinct as of now. And it's, you know, it's hard to think that in 2017 we're talking about this, and that this is the lead story on international television and news, but it is right that it's there. It should be the lead story. These women, first of all, in talking about it, is healing for those women, those victims. These women who have come out are strong, powerful, influential women in a medium that is revered to women in all different businesses and different corporations around the world, where this goes on every day. Every day. So I hope the talking of it and the sharing and the vehemently disgrace and the fall from grace that this man has had, you're never too big to fail, is a lesson to all those who ever question that this is acceptable in my industry, in your industry, in the corporate world that is our industry, at the corner store, in schools, in colleges. It's unacceptable behavior. And I think the attention is due. And I really believe that if this is not a tipping point, or at least some kind of turning point, my thought about the human race and as a man, as abusers in power, this is the ultimate abuse of power, then I think that we are stuck in a world that is both sad and very destructive.
Well said, well said. So, you know, I could talk with you all day, but unfortunately, we don't have all day. The panel that follows, though, is this is a good segue, because we will be talking about how to talk to younger audiences. So on that note, what advice do you have for younger actresses entering this business in, you know, post-Harvey, in a post-Harvey world? What advice would you tell them?
Well, growing up as a very young person, I was 9 years old and I did my first theater piece in the West End, and have only ever done this. And going back to what I said about how important it is that these powerful women have come out, because we shouldn't be apologetic for vulnerability. Vulnerability is a beautiful character trait that we should have, and we're allowed to have. We're allowed to have. What I will say is that as women, we need to be kind to each other. I was always the leading lady. I never had a chance to sit around trailers and talk to a lot of other actresses. I used to see them at the Golden Globes. That's the only time I ever used to meet my contemporaries. But talking about our experiences, never losing your vulnerability and knowing that it is protected and you are strong inside, no matter how naive you are to the industry, no matter how professional you are and how long you've been in the business. A vulnerable, especially as an actor, it's essential that we have that for our craft. But you have to, I say to my daughter who wants to be in this business, and she asks me when all this media came out about Harvey, did that ever happen to you, Mom? And I said, no. It didn't happen to me, and I'm blessed because it happens to so many women all the time. And dialogue is key. Know that the industry is full of women who have to be friends, have to support each other. There's room for everybody. I mean, I'm also in the corporate world. You know, I know a few women in the corporate world who are powerful, and I applaud them. But some of them only want to be the only powerful woman in the boardroom. They don't like it when there's any more coming in. I don't like that. What it does is that it sends a message to others that she's a bitch, a ball breaker, and it sends the bad message to women as powerful. I think what this has taught me is that the more power we can have in powerful positions, then the less this is going to happen, because we won't let it happen.
On that note, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much.
That was a wonderful conversation. I'd like to introduce Marisa Guthrie, the TV editor from Hollywood Reporter, for another insightful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm very proud and honored to announce you that we're launching, you know, the next, we hope it to be the reference or the worldwide reference in terms of TV series. So a TV series which is called CANNESERIES here in Cannes next April during the MIPCOM. And we're very happy to announce that we have a fairy, an ambassador, a patron who accepted to join the team in this adventure. It's Sitze Babette Knudsen. She just arrived. Thank you, Sitze Babette. We're very happy to have you to help us for this first edition. Thank you.
Thank you. So last year I sat up here a few weeks after the Access Hollywood tape was revealed, revealing what many had alleged about America's current president. We thought that would be the end of him, and we would be electing our first female president. Now here we are again. The revelations about Harvey Weinstein's gross abuse, coercion, and subjugation of women over 30 years in Hollywood, where he had countless enablers, including the media, has thrust us into another national examination of the sexual crimes and misdeeds of powerful men in 2017. So apparently this is so ingrained in the Hollywood culture that many people, when told of Weinstein's affronts, just shrugged and said, oh, that's Harvey. So the women sitting on this stage, and many of you in this room, have hired, promoted, and mentored women in the industry, but clearly we have a very long way to go to implementing a zero-tolerance policy against gender inequality. So I would just like to start by asking each of the panelists, what do you think the single most important thing you can do to promote more gender balance industry is?
I'll start. I think we as women across the board have to remember that it's about us promoting women in front of and behind the camera. And we have to think about that. I even go so far, when I'm working on a set, I get the second AD, who in the UK usually does the extras, and say I want 50-50 women, and I want a range of ages. I also think as women, we've got to be really cautious, and just carrying on from what Catherine said earlier, we have to send the ladder back down, and we have to keep sending it and pushing it down further and further and finding new talent across the board and helping them to come up. And I think as women too, we've got to be careful that we have a tendency to be the worst discriminators against fellow women. And so we have to take a stand within ourselves and check our own behavior too.
I completely concur with that. I think that's very well put. And I mean, what's interesting is in our wider society, we still live in a society where only less than 10% of women held kind of executive CEO posts. And I think it's really important for all the women who are born and growing up in this world are shown role models of people working behind, you know, and in front of the camera, but also stories that reflect powerful women in all sorts of different walks of life. So it's important that all of us give space to foster, support, facilitate those stories. And also, going beyond that, women and men, how we all find, negotiate our careers with our families. I think it's about working practices that facilitate that, and also working practices that make sure that no one is abused by any power, whether man or women.
Maybe I can add something. I totally agree with what has just been said. I had a different perspective because I was on the government side. And I think authorities, political authorities, public people have a responsibility also to act, because it's always very easy to say things will evolve nicely and develop nicely. But if you wait, you can see that nothing really changes, or it takes a very long time. And so I think, you know, in France, we don't like affirmative action because we like equality. We like things to be equal for everybody. But still, I think sometimes affirmative action is required. And I really changed my mind over the years about that. And I think if you see that things do not change rapidly enough or quickly enough, then affirmative action can be introduced. And in France, we have a very good example, because this board story you were mentioning is not, you know, just in media or in movie industry, it's everywhere. I mean, if you look at executive committees or boardrooms in big companies, you will see that very few women are sitting there. And so we took a law, actually, a long time ago. The government decided that there should be 40% of women in the biggest corporations in France. And at the time, I remember that people were saying, no, it's a scandal because we're not going to find women and they're busy and they don't have time, or there are not enough quality women, you know, what the hell? And they said, so it's not going to be possible. And even, you know, like headhunters, they say, yeah, it's very difficult because the sourcing is difficult. But anyway, the members of parliament, they decided to vote that law, and they decided to create a financial sanction if you did not abide by this law. And this law came into force in January this year. And they managed. They found the women by magic.
What a shock.
So if you take some, you know, compulsory measure and you force people to do it, they will find a way to do it. Of course, it's affirmative action, so it would be better if it came naturally, but if it doesn't, then I think this kind of idea is good. And then I would like to add that we have a micro responsibility as mothers. I mean, if when we educate our girls or boys, we have a responsibility also to give them role models, or to explain to them what gender equality is about, how women or girls can really, you know, have all kinds of jobs and not certain kinds of jobs, and boys all the same. So I think we have a private responsibility in the way we educate our children to make them understand that maybe the old schemes, the old paradigms are no longer valid.
Willow, you've been in the industry for a while. How have the commercial imperatives of content that specifically targets women, how has that changed? Because in Hollywood, we just had our first action movie superhero movie directed by a woman, Patty Jenkins, Wonder Woman. And it sort of woke everybody up to, oh, wow, it's a female heroine and boys will go watch this movie too. So how has that changed in your experience?
I mean, that's really interesting, the example you mentioned, and also it's definitely changing in TV. You know, I think there's a huge push from so many networks and end users for stories where women are at the heart, and there's been some great examples of that recently, some incredible TV shows which have really pushed the envelope and broken boundaries. And interestingly, the Gina Davis Institute has done a lot of work about this, because actually it's not just important to have those stories, but actually they are commercially viable, you know, and often they're more commercially viable than the ones with men at the center of them. And so I think we are at a tipping point, but we have a lot further to go. Interestingly, I've just made a show for the BBC and Netflix, which has a millennial young woman at its heart. It's not a romance, it's a supernatural thriller, and she is absolutely, it's all about her. And so we have a young female lead. It's directed by an up-and-coming young 30-year-old woman who'd only done a single before. She did all 6 episodes with a 1.5-year-old child. She directed it all, with a young female DOP. Everyone on that show is a woman, apart from the man who wrote it, but still, it's about, you know. But things are changing slowly, and it's an exciting time, but there's a long way to go.
Farah, your PYPO content specifically targets women. How difficult or easy was it to secure support, financial support, participation for your platform?
We've got a TV group that's behind us who has come aboard to help sort of drive the content that we're now making. I think we've got a clip as well of some of the work that we've done, which has also been, it's been acquired by Norwegian Air. They're going to make a channel on their airline, which will just specifically be this content and screening it for people on the planes, because they know that people like comedy that happens to be female-focused. It's funny. You know, I hate to shock people, but we are funny. Some of the time.
So that's interesting, because we were talking about this before. You can sneak in some subversive messaging with comedy, can't you? How important is that in speaking to women and speaking to all audiences, and young women audiences?
Well, I can't speak as an older woman what it's like to be young at the moment, but we just make things that are funny, and I think comedy is a great platform to say things that you're thinking in a way that is, you know, accessible to people. And I think that's the one thing that we do, is we make the comedy accessible both to young people and older people. And I think it's by casting wisely. I think it's by looking for new comedians, new voices that appeal to people. We're constantly trailing sort of Vines and sort of stand-up comedy clubs, looking for up-and-coming sort of comedians who happen to be female. We also work with blokes as well, so that, you know, it's working together. But it's about finding that sort of, I don't know what works in comedy. I know when it doesn't work, if that addresses it, but it's having those fresh voices. And I know that I haven't been told what it is, but I know that we're doing a big, unique event on the 31st of January next year with sort of comedians, but I'm not allowed to know, because I'd probably tell people, because I'm Irish and I'm chatty, so they wouldn't tell me today, but they just told me that. And I think it's just getting out there and engaging with young comedians and giving them the platform to be able to make this content, and that's what we're focusing on. I don't know if I've quite answered your question or not. I just feel like as a person who's out there, you know, commissioning content, I have to look at the grassroots to find it, and that's what's exciting.
Willow, you talked about the auspices of Requiem. When you're choosing projects, how important is it? Do you have a new consciousness for choosing projects that are from women, that feature women, or is this something that you've always done in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just happens organically. We all want to work and contribute to projects that we feel passionately about, that we passionately connect to, and I just think what's changed is that there's a more commercial space to tell the kind of stories that you weren't necessarily able to tell before, and that space is opening up, and that's a really exciting thing.
And Fleur, the gender parity that you were speaking about earlier that was imposed in France, it was also something that was imposed in the Film Academy when you were culture minister there. I mean, how difficult was it to get that specifically through?
It was not really imposed, actually. We were trying to make some efforts in the whole creative industries and culture area to promote the representativeness or representativity of women, because we noticed that either when you looked at the broadcasting channels, at the big industrial, you know, in the creative industry sector, big corporations or theaters. So in the whole cultural sector, when you looked at executive positions, directing, managing positions, very few were held by women. And so there was this, you know, thinking about how can we promote the presence of women in these executive positions, but it was very complicated. And the first step was maybe to qualify or to name or to characterize the situation by counting simply, you know. And when you looked at the numbers, it was really frightening because they were like maybe in public institutions less than 5% of women in executive positions. So we started to have this conversation and debate among the cultural actors, and also in the movie industry, in the cinema, when you looked at juries or the film that are in the selections, you know, very few are directed by women. So that's something, I think there's not one course of action or one measure you can take to make things change, but the whole conscience of it, and the fact that now it would seem very strange and unnerving that, you know, a selection of movies would only show main characters, male characters, or maybe would be only directed by male directors. That would be something very strange. So I think we must, you know, continue to work on that, to bring the conscience of the people, so that, you know, things will eventually change. But it's very difficult to pass a bill or to pass a decree saying half of the selection will be, you know, with a female intervention. So.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to bring up about Sweden, because they brought in the diversity quota, and what they said that happened then is that caused people to act in a certain way. So a lot of the film companies went to film schools and asked for who are your female directors that will do sort of genre like action or horror, and it forced a change within the industry. And a lot of women were saying that they had gone to dramas or film schools saying, I want to direct action movies, I want to do horror, and they were being told, no, you're better off doing drama, and they got pushed in a certain direction. So it's really interesting that that forced a change within the thinking and how people were sourcing talent. And Ireland has just announced a quota system as well, as has England. So I think this is going to see a massive change in the content that we're seeing being made and who's making it as well.
Yeah, and I think importantly is the public discussion about these issues, which is the one silver lining of the current news tsunami that we're in, is that we're all now talking about it, and not just women are talking about it, because I think as women, we've been talking about this stuff for a long time amongst ourselves, and I think it's really important that men participate in this conversation and also give voice to this conversation. And I think culturally it's difficult because as an industry, Hollywood has made money objectifying women. And so when we keep reinforcing the stereotypes if we only have people from a certain point of view doing things. I mean, have you thought about the storytelling, what kinds of stories you don't want to tell, and what kind as opposed to what kind you do want to tell?
Before I answer that, I just want to say one thing about this issue that we're all talking about today in terms of the bigger news story, and I think it's easy to just become fixated on one man or one industry. This isn't about one man, this isn't about one industry. It's much wider than that. It reaches through all forms of society, and it's about power. And ultimately, what do we do? How do we address this when the current leader of the free world effectively legitimizes it in some of the things he says? And I think that is the challenge, and some of the things we've talked about today are ways in which we can address it, but it's very easy for it just to be focused on one man, and I think that really kind of misses the point.
Exactly. And in terms of the storytelling, are there things you won't do? I mean, we've in Hollywood, you know, there are depictions of rape, constant, like violent, brutal rape in programming that's supposed to entertain us, but also make us think and feel. But
I think it's a constant dialogue, and we all have to keep asking ourselves those questions, and it's a constant dialogue there. You know, we all know that certain networks need certain things, but I think already, even in the last 2 months, things are changing, and so I think we can't become complacent, and it's something that we just have to constantly discuss and assess effectively.
And we have an obligation as those creators and aggregators.
And that's something that I think we all also is a focus, is how stereotypes persist in our entertainment. I would just like to end by asking each of you, you've mentioned this, and Catherine mentioned this also, as there's so few women in power in industries that once they get there, they get very scared and don't want to send the ladder down. So I just would love each of you just quickly to say how and what you're doing to send the ladder down to the younger generations.
Well, with PYPO, we've got an online platform that really nourishes and brings new talent up from the grassroots, and we're constantly out looking for it. And it doesn't matter about the person's experience. I also run a competition with BAFTA called the BAFTA Rockcliffe New Writing Competition and Showcase, and our scripts are selected through a blind selection process. So nobody knows the age, race, gender, experience of the writer, and it makes it an easier way to find new voices. And I think that that's what we have to do. We've constantly got to be looking for those newer voices and check our own behavior constantly. Are we helping people come up? Because that's really important. I remember the people who helped me, and I remember the people who didn't.
I'm doing, obviously, on a project-by-project basis. We talked about Requiem. That's a really good example of bringing young, talented women up in front of and behind the screen. But the other thing is, I think that, certainly in my generation, when I came of age, I think for a long time, I thought I was waiting for someone to give me permission to be strong and to take control. And I feel very strongly that all the younger women who are coming up that I mentor, I don't want them to have to wait for someone's permission. They need to feel that they can take that now.
Yeah, I think that being an inspiration, or even if it sounds a bit not so modest, but being an inspiration and sharing our experience with younger generation can be very helpful, because a lot of young girls, I think, have some questions, sometimes very basic questions about, very cliche things. But how do you balance your private life with a very busy professional life? How do you cope with your husband, sometimes earning less money than you? So it can be very basic questions like that. But they need to have some reference, and they need to have some feedback about how you can, go through life and deal with this kind of issue, because you always deal with them. Even if they seem to you very difficult, you always find a way to deal with it if you are focused on your objective, on your ambition. So I think the fact that we can share our experience with the younger generations is very important.
Thank you all. That's it for us. Just the head table come up for a quick photo, and then we can eat.